I typically like to keep my workspace clean, light, and aesthetically appealing. I want the technology to get out of the way when creating and to blend in with the background, yet still be powerful enough for all of my tasks. I don't want to trip over a mess of cords or have wires hanging all around, creating distractions and stopping my workflow. The iMac M1 is as simple and attractive as a consumer desktop can get. The light-hearted color choices and white bezel design gives the computer an inviting and approachable feeling. From the face of the display to the color-matching peripherals and magnetic power adapter, every piece of this computer feels designed to fit simply into any family or office setting. So I'm not going to pretend I'm completely against wide peripherals and computers that are not an all-in-one, like the iMacs or the MacBooks. There's a place for those devices. I myself have a 3080 PC and use all wired peripherals for gaming. But when it comes to general computing tasks, there's a reason I prefer Mac products. I ordered the iMac M1 for my wife's crafting room. The small footprint and lightweight design makes it easy to move around her desk to create extra space for crafting materials and cutters. The whole computer is so thin that when viewing it from the side, it almost just disappears. To achieve that thin design, Apple houses all of its components into the controversial chin. Although I personally like the idea of a slightly thicker chassis to house the components behind the display, that would have strayed too far away from the iconic iMac look, and could run the risk of appearing to average consumers as just a nice monitor and not an all-in-one desktop. Another consequence of this thin design is the port selection, which that's not the greatest trade-off. I understand everything is going towards USB-C, but we're still not quite there, and a lot of peripherals still use USB-A, which this design is so thin that a USB-A port wouldn't fit. I mean, I guess they could add them to the side like they do with the headphone jack, but either way, it would be nice to have a few Type A ports, which our base model only has 2 Thunderbolt USB-C ports. You can of course upgrade to the $1,500 model, which will include an additional 2 USB-C ports, but without Thunderbolt. The base model also does not include Touch ID on the keyboard or an Ethernet port. Luckily, I do have plenty of USB-C dongles laying around, as my personal everyday computer is still the MacBook Air M1. I plan to do a long-term review on the Air soon, so subscribe if you want to see that. The main difference between the Air and the iMac is this gorgeous Retina display. The 24-inch size is big enough for our use case. Photo and video editing work well and have great color accuracy, and it doesn't feel too cramped with the 4.5K resolution. It's enough to make detailed photo edits, and it maintains that 218 ppi Retina requirement for crisp text and images during general computing. And in our brightly lit room, the display is easy to view with 500 nits of peak brightness. However, the anti-glare could be better. The whole front of the computer has a very glossy finish, so if the window is facing directly into the screen, you may find yourself adjusting the angle away to remove the glare. Above the display is a 1080p webcam. It's a good quality webcam, a bit over-sharpened, but good enough, especially for an integrated webcam. Performance on this iMac for general computing tasks is pretty incredible. The M1 processor, which is also now in the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and iPad Pro, have been getting rave reviews for the past few months for its efficiency and performance. Applications optimized for Apple Silicon run faster than ever, and many x86 applications that are running through Apple's Rosetta 2 translation layer are performing better than they did on Intel processors. And every day, more applications are becoming optimized for Apple Silicon, making them native and even faster. Still, there are some Pro applications not optimized that perform better on the Intel devices. An example, although other Adobe applications like After Effects have an Apple Silicon native version in the works, the current release still benefits from the raw performance of Intel machines. But if you are planning to use this for heavier applications for things like video rendering, you may want to steer clear from the base model iMac M1 anyway. One of my biggest disappointments is that the base model iMac only has 1 fan for cooling instead of the 2 in the higher priced options. Along with that, there's a less effective heatsink versus the dedicated heat pipe in the higher tier models. You would probably never notice or care for general computing tasks. However, When playing Apple Arcade games or using the iMac for more intensive tasks, I noticed the single fan ramping to audible levels and the CPU and GPU getting as hot as 99 degrees Celsius. So instead, I like to hook up the Nintendo Switch with the Genki Shadowcast. I'll actually add a link to my review in the description, which has more games we like to play anyway. However, if CPU or GPU intensive applications are in your workflow, I think the extra $200 for the improved cooling, along with the Touch ID, additional 2 USB-C ports, and an Ethernet port, are very well worth it. And while we are upgrading options, if you are a power user, I would also recommend choosing the 16 gigs of onboard memory, as I have experienced some slowdowns when layering multiple effects to 4K footage in Final Cut. Nonetheless, the base model iMac M1's design and performance is a perfect fit for our needs. It is more than powerful enough for general computing tasks and has an outstanding display at a reasonable price. So let me know what you think of the M1 iMacs. Do you hate the design? Do you love the design? Do you think it's just complete garbage? Let me know in the comments below. I hope to see you in the next one.